And we're back on Shardlight Radio. I'm your host, Mr. Ben, and today we are going to tackle the Reckless versus the Raging. It's a battle of the Shard Beasts. Who will prevail? Does that count as a Bruce Buffer impersonation? In this corner, the Raging Shard Beast, and in this corner, the Reckless Shard Beast. Okay, that's a better Bruce Buffer impression. Silly intros aside, before I get into the topic, I just wanted to make everybody aware that there is a Argent Cup point qualifying event at Geek City Games and Comics in North Liberty, Iowa on December 7th at 3 p.m. I will be there with a high five for everyone who shows up. Now, on to today's topic. I want to talk about the two different Shard Beasts that we have in the game. The first Shard Beast, the Raging Shard Beast, was released in the Generations expansion to an awful lot of hoopla. This card was going to come in and it was going to be so aggressive that it was going to dominate the format. And yeah, we all know it didn't quite work out that way, but that doesn't necessarily mean that this isn't a great tool for aggressive decks. Considering how many control-type decks throw Raging Shard Beast into their sideboard when they need to switch gears, it says something about how quality the card is. The other Shard Beast we got in the Revelations expansion, and this is a little bit different of a tool. So I guess let's just dive straight in. I'm going to take these in reverse order. Let's start with the Reckless Shard Beast. The Reckless Shard Beast is a 2-cost, 1,000 power unit. It has the arrive ability that you may destroy one of your own face-down towers, and if you do, this card gains quickness. The real risk here is that you have to target a face-down tower. So there are game states where you're going to know what that face-down tower is prior to targeting it, but there are going to be game states where you just have to roll the dice and you might end up hitting a tower that would be suboptimal. If you're trying to play this guy out and push early game, popping, say, a Tower of Air or a Tower of Fire, when your opponent doesn't really have any juicy targets for that, that can really suck. And is that worth it to get a little bit of early game quickness? I'm not sure. The drawback on the Reckless Shard Beast is that it is causing damage to you. It's pushing you towards losing the game in order to get the ability to attack without delay. That can definitely win you the game on the spot. There are games where the difference between winning and losing comes down to you being able to attack the same turn that you play something. That's a big deal. Before we get too deep into the analysis, though, I'm going to bounce over to the other card, the Raging Shard Beast. This is a 1-cost, 2,000 power unit that prevents you from playing cards with a cost 3 or more. Just on the basis of the numbers on the card, you're paying half as much to get twice as much power. That seems really good. This card has no ability to grant itself quickness, and given the aggressive nature of both Shard Beasts, quickness is a huge deal. A huge deal. I also, just as a total side note, Raging Shard Beast absolutely wins the flavor text battle. What is that in all caps with an exclamation point and a question mark is much sweeter flavor text than watch out or you will get trampled. Plus there's a little bit of a typo in the flavor text for Reckless Shard Beast, but moving on. I guess since I'm doing trivial stuff, card art wise, I think Raging totally beats Reckless. Now the Reckless Shard Beast kind of overall has like a cool aesthetic because you can see the beast a little bit better, but the Raging Shard Beast smashing through something with the glow off of its horn kind of fading in the background definitely wins both the flavor text and the card art components of the card comparison. What kind of deck are you going to build where you're going to want either of these guys? Well, you're definitely going to want a low to the ground, aggressive framework to plug these guys into. The drawback on the Raging Shard Beast is a limitation on what your future options could be. Now, if you build a deck that doesn't have cards cost 3 or more, this drawback essentially doesn't exist. But even the most aggressive decks in Argent Saga, because of the nature of the game and how winning requires you to chew through all of these towers which generate value for your opponent, even the most aggressive decks don't always close the game out early game. While in some other games where killing somebody on turn 3 or 4 seems really reasonable, the Raging Shard Beast preventing you from playing cards that cost 3 or more is a really big deal. If this was 4 or more, I think it would totally change the analysis on this card and it would be ridiculously broken. But 3 or more really closes the door on a ton of different options. Now, to clarify for anyone who's not aware, reducing the cost to play a card through something like May Use Assistant, you play Pam, your 3-cost spells become 2 cost, you still can't play them. No matter how many gear you have in your KO pile, Iskandar cannot be played while you control a Raging Shard Beast, because what the Shard Beast checks is the printed cost to play the card, not the cost of the card after reductions. This kind of controls and harms your overall game state for the entire rest of the game, where compared to the Reckless Shard Beast, this does a one-time drawback damage to you. You wreck a tower, but really, given how towers work, depending upon the tower you hit, that could just be more value. So you play the Reckless Shard Beast, you pop a tower, you kill a thing, or you draw some cards, and then you get to attack with him right away. Quickness in this game is a really big deal. The ability to push stuff through without giving your opponent a chance to respond. Yes, instacast spells exist, and there are abilities that can move at instacast speed, but those are not always going to be available to your opponent. Having an instacast spell in your hand when all your shards are tapped out is the same as not having it at all. And the Reckless Shard Beast demands that kind of answer. This card can just come down and win you the game if the rest of the towers are already popped. Raging Shard Beast, on the other hand, while it does bring more power to the board for a lower cost, and that cannot be understated how important a 2,000 power unit is for only one Shardlight. That's a really big deal. This is an overstated unit for very low cost, but the drawback is significant. The thing with the Raging Shard Beast is if he does not come out and do the work that you want him to do, he kind of sucks. You play him out and he gets killed right away, whatever. But if you play him out and he gets trapped on the board through chained exhaustion effects, or technique I saw once was using the 500 power Argent Guardian to guard against the Shard Beast whenever it attacks, and then use Airgon to put that back on the top of the deck so that you can keep cycling it, and you can't suicide the Shard Beast and you can't break through. You can really get trapped. If your game plan is to play a Raging Shard Beast early in the game and then make sure that it gets eliminated, there are strategies that can lock this guy into play and prevent you from clearing him off the board. And once he's locked onto the board, if you have anything that costs 3 or more in your hand, it just rots there. It clogs up your draw, and there's not really anything you can do. Whereas the Reckless Shard Beast, you take a one-time hit when he comes into play, and you don't have to. I think that's one of the most important factors about Reckless versus Raging, is Raging, you are locked into that. Once he's on the board, you are taking a risk when you field that unit. Yes, it's a big power move and can give you a real burst of tempo onto the board to push for damage and try to win that game. But if he gets trapped out there and you built your deck with the assumption that you would be able to clear him if necessary, now all of a sudden you have a bunch of cards you can't do anything with. Reckless, on the other hand, if you don't have the towers or you're in a position where destroying one of your own towers could be really detrimental, you can just play him out. Now, a 2-cost 1,000 power unit that does nothing is not good, but is it better to have a unit that does nothing than a unit that locks out some percentage of the cards in your deck from being able to be played at all? Really kind of depends on your deck construction. Overall, in my decks, I have been including more Reckless Shard Beasts and fewer Raging Shard Beasts when I'm trying to build in a really aggressive way. Now, a card like Yuki brings up some interesting interactions with both of these cards. Starting with Rage. Once a tower is broken, you can put Yuki into play. Now, she costs 3, but you're not playing her. You are putting her into play. Raging Shard Beast does not prevent Yuki from bouncing into play, which is pretty cool. But it's a special ability on that card that allows her to duck under this drawback. Whereas the drawback on Reckless Shard Beast, you use your Reckless Shard Beast, it kills a tower, you drop Yuki into play for free, and you can control exactly when she hits the board. So that's one example of the kinds of synergistic dancing you have to do to make a Raging Shard Beast work. There has to be ways for you to get around this drawback, where when you look at the Reckless, you don't necessarily have to get around the drawback. There's, in fact, game states where you look at the drawback as an advantage. So if I have to compare these two units head to head, while the cost and power certainly goes in favor of the Raging Shard Beast, as does flavor text and art, I definitely think that the Reckless Shard Beast has more use cases and can be that card that just comes out of nowhere and does a little bit of burst damage your opponent wasn't expecting and can win you the game. If I have to choose one beast, I'm going to go Reckless all the way. Until next time, go win some games.